Hello students, welcome back. This is Ms. Mercado and I am going to be continuing covering some of the problems from chapter 2. This short video is going to deal with demonstration problems to help with homework 2B. Okay? We are using the 2020 edition of the Payroll Accounting Cengage textbook, and this is Accounting 1329, Payroll and Business Tax Accounting. Okay? So, hopefully by now you're getting the gist of how to complete your homework assignments in Cengage. Okay? Please practice. Like I explained last time, some of the problems have short videos. All of your problems are algorithmic, which means that every student has different problems. Same concept, just different either names or dollar amounts, number of hours worked, etc. This week we are going to continue covering chapter 2, some of the problems from chapter 2 that you'll be seeing on your homework. Okay, so let's jump in. I don't want to waste too much of your time. So we are going to start off with problem 217A. Okay, I've covered the problem from the textbook. Okay, so let's go over the problem. So this particular problem deals with piece rate. It says during the first week of November, Aaron Mills worked 45.5 hours and produce 1,275 units under a piece rate system. The regular piece rate is 45 cents a unit. Mills is paid overtime according to the FLSA ruling for overtime work under a piece rate system. Compute. They're asking us to calculate the piece work earnings, the regular hourly rate, the overtime hourly rate, the overtime earning, and the total earnings. Okay? So, like I stated, before you try your problems, make sure that you read. Reading is very, very important. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now, this information is coming straight from your book. It says, under a piece rate system, the employer pays workers according to their output, such as an amount for each unit or piece produced. Thus, the wages increases as production increases. The employer keeps production records for each employee so that these records will be available when computing the wages earned by each employee. The Fair Labor Standards Act specifies that under a piece rate system, the regular hourly rate of pay is computed as shown in the example provided in your textbook. Now, I didn't cover the example because I'm going to go over this, but you can go back and refer to the example in your book if necessary. So it says, the piece rate must at least equal the statutory minimum wage rate. Okay? So what does this tell you? If you have a very slow employee that produces very little work, then you're going to have to be careful because you need to make sure that whatever they're producing equals to the minimum wage. If it doesn't, you have to cover the difference. In which case, if I were the employer and I have an employee that's very slow, you'll probably get rid of the employee because they're not producing what they should be. But that's another story. Okay? So in some instances, an employer must pay a worker an hourly rate for some hours and a piece rate for others during the week. So for those hours in which they didn't produce enough to cover the minimum wage, they're going to have to get paid hourly. In the others where they worked enough, then they'll get paid piece rate. Okay? In such cases, both the hourly rate and the piece rate earnings must be at least the minimum rate. Okay? Now, there's two ways of calculating overtime earnings. In this particular problem, in 217, we're going to cover method A. Okay? In problem 218, we're going to cover method B. So problem 217 and 218 basically work use the same information provided. It's just that in one of the problems, we're going to use method A of calculating overtime. In 218, we're going to calculate using method B. Now, method A. Okay? For overtime work, the piece worker is entitled to be paid, in addition to the piece work earnings for the entire period, a sum equal to 1/2 the regular hourly rate of pay multiplied by the number of hours worked in excess of 40. So, to calculate the overtime, anything worked above 40 hours, they're going to get paid 1/2 the regular hourly rate. Okay? It's a lot of information. Now, let's apply this information to the problem. Okay? So, the first thing that they're wanting us to calculate is the piece work earnings. Okay? So, to calculate the piecework earnings, okay, we're going to go ahead and we are going to get the number of items or pieces that were produced. In this particular case, this employee, Aaron, produced 1,275 units. So we have 1,275 units, okay? And for each unit, he gets paid, Aaron gets paid 0.45 cents, okay? So let me put a little box here so we can put the calculation. So we're gonna get our calculator, okay? So 1,275 units were produced at a rate of 0.45. That means that the piecework earnings are $573.75. Okay. So I'm going to do my calculation here within the cell. 1,275 times 0.45 is 573.75. Okay. Now, letter B. The regular hourly rate. Okay. Regular hourly rate. So we know that this employee earned $573.75, which we calculated in letter A. Okay. We're gonna divide by the total number of hours worked. How many hours did he work? 45 and a half. Okay. And that is going to give us our hourly rate. Okay. So 573.75 divided by 45.5 hours. That's going to give me 12.60989010 blah 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 blah. Okay. We need to round. Okay. And the instructions on the rounding is usually we round. We look at the third decimal, which is a 9. If the third decimal is 5 or greater, you round up. If it's 1 through 4, we keep it as is. Okay? So in this case, it's 12.609. Because this is a 9, I'm going to round this up to 12.61. Okay? So the hourly rate is 12.61. That is how much the hourly rate is, 12.61. Okay? They're also asking us to calculate the overtime hourly rate. Okay? The overtime hourly rate, according to method A, it says we're going to get the sum equal to 1/2 of the regular hourly rate. Okay? So my hourly rate is 12.61, and I'm going to do 1/2. To get 1/2, we're going to divide by 2. Okay? So that's going to be 12.61 divided by 2, 6.305. Okay? So let's look at this third decimal. It's a 5. If it's a 5 or greater, we round up. So then that's going to be 6.31. Okay? That is going to be my overtime hourly rate. Okay? Now, letter C. They want us to calculate the overtime earnings. Okay? So, my overtime earnings are going to be, okay, how many hours did this employee work above 40? Well, he worked 45.5, so that means that he worked 5.5 hours of overtime. Okay? So 5.5 overtime hours. Okay? And I'm going to multiply it by the overtime rate, which is 631, which we calculated in letter B. Okay? So the number of overtime hours, 5.5 overtime hours, times my overtime rate of 631. And let's get our calculators out. It'll be 5.5 hours times 6.31 is my overtime rate. That'll be 34.705. Okay? Because the third digit is a 5 or greater, I'm going to round up. So that'll be 34.71. Okay, sorry, wrong cell. That is my overtime earnings. Okay. Last but not least, we have the total earnings. Okay. So, your total earnings are going to be your piecework earnings. Okay. Piecework earnings plus your overtime earnings. Okay? Okay? And that is going to be the 573.75 plus the 34.71. Okay? So you add those two together. Okay? Let's get our calculator. 573.75 plus 34.71. That will give me 608.46. That is going to be your total earnings. Okay? You've got your piecework earnings plus your overtime earnings, and then you add them together, and that will give you your total earnings. Okay? So, I hope you were able to follow along. It's just a matter of taking the steps. Make sure that you do a step at a time. First, figure out your piecework earnings, based on the actual production. And then you have to calculate based on that number your hourly rate using the total hours worked. Once you have your hourly rate, you simply divide by 2 to get your overtime rate. And then you have to figure out your overtime earnings. How many hours were worked above the 40? In this case, there were 5.5 hours. And you calculate, or you multiply by the overtime rate calculated in letter B, which was 631. That gives you your overtime earnings. And then last but not least, you add your A plus your C, which is your piecework earnings, plus your overtime earnings, and that will give you your total earnings. Okay? So that is 217. Now, 218, it says to refer back to the problem 217, which is what we have over here. Okay? So, here we have a different assumption. We're going to assume that Mills has agreed with her employer prior to the performance of the work that she would be paid 1.5 times the regular piece rate for all pieces produced during their overtime hours. Okay? We're going to assume that her production totals for the week were 1,075 pieces during regular hours and 200 pieces during the overtime hours. Now, this is where we use method B. For method B, it's another method of computing overtime payment for piecework which complies with the requirements of FLSA. Before doing the work, the piece rate employees must agree with their employer in advance of the work being done to be paid at a rate not less than 1.5 times the piece rate for each piece produced during the overtime hours. No additional overtime pay will be due to the employees. Okay? So, 218. Okay? The first requirement is to calculate the piecework earnings. Okay? So, how many pieces were produced in total during the regular hours? Okay, here we are going to break it down between regular hours, what was produced during the regular 40 hours, and what was produced during the overtime. Okay, so regular hours, during the regular hours, 1,075 pieces were produced. So we have 1,075 pieces. Okay, and remember from 217, we get paid 45 cents a unit. Okay, so we're going to multiply times 0.45. So we're going to enter that into our calculator. 1,075 pieces times 0.45. That's going to give me 483.75. Wrong cell. Letter B. Letter B, we're going to calculate the overtime earnings. Okay? So, for the overtime earnings, how many pieces were produced during overtime? 200 pieces. So we have 200 pieces. Okay? And then we're going to multiply. It says here that we're going to get paid 1.5 times the rate for each piece produced. Okay? So, 200 pieces times, okay? And then this is going, I'm going to get my calculator. Okay? So, I know that for each piece, I get paid 0.45 cents. I'm going to multiply that times 1.5. So that means that for every piece, I'm going to get paid 0.675 of overtime. So I'm going to round this. Since this is a 5, that's going to convert to an 8. So I'm going to get paid 0.68 cents for every overtime, or for every piece that I produce during the overtime. Okay? So it's going to be multiplied by 0.68. And that was calculated by getting 0.45 times 1.5. So, I'm going to get 200 pieces at my overtime rate of 0.68 cents a piece. That's going to give me $136. Okay. So in this case, we are calculating the pieces that were worked during the first 40 hours at 45 cents, which was 1,075 pieces. Then the 200 pieces that were produced above or during the overtime period, they're going to get paid at 1.5 times the rate. So you were getting paid 45 cents a piece at 1.5 the rate. Each piece produced during overtime period is going to get paid at 68 cents. That's going to give me $136. So to calculate my total earnings, it'll be A plus B. The 483.75 plus the 136. Okay. So let's get our calculator. Okay, 483.75 plus 136. That is going to give me 619.75. Okay. That plus that. 619.75. Okay. So that is how we calculate the overtime earnings using method B. So we've covered piece rate calculations using method A of overtime and method B of overtime. But remember, if it's method B, it must be agreed upon before the work is performed. Okay? Now let's do the last problem for this set. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me get my book over here. One moment. Here I got. Okay, so now we're covering 221. Okay, this one reads, Casey Collins' average work week during the first quarter of the year, this is for 13 weeks, was 43 hours. So on average, Cassie was working 43 hours a week. That's what it's saying. As part of his company's perfect attendance program, he earned a bonus of $975. Okay? So if he didn't miss a day during the quarter, he was getting a bonus of $975. Now we have to determine the extra overtime pay due to Collins for the first quarter as a result of the bonus. Okay? And why do we need to do this? Because on average, this employee worked 43 hours. Okay? So there is some overtime involved. If the employee had only worked 40 hours, then all he gets is $9.75. But because he did work some overtime, there has to be some overtime pay that is due as a result of the bonus. Okay? Now, on your textbook, they talk about non-discretionary bonuses. So, a bonus that is part of the employee's wage rates must be allocated to the wages for the period covered by the bonus, which is a 13-week period here. Bonuses that are known in advance or are set up as inducements to achieve goals would fit into this category, which is the case. They're inducing you to come to work and you get a bonus. The employer has only to add the bonus to the wages for the week and divide the sum by the total hours worked to determine the regular rate of pay. 1/2 of the regular rate would be the premium needed to apply to the overtime hours. So, they're asking us to calculate the extra overtime pay. So, I'm going to break this down in steps. Step number 1. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Okay. So, step number 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my bonus amount. Okay. And I'm going to divide by the number of weeks it covers. Okay. So it covers 13 weeks. Okay. So that's going to give me $9.75 divided by 13 weeks. This gives me a $75 bonus per week. Okay. Per week. Let me write it out. Bonus per week. Okay. Now, step number 2. Okay. I'm going to get my $75 weekly bonus. Okay. And I'm going to divide it by the number of hours worked each week. Okay. 43 hours. Weekly hours worked. Okay. And that is going to give me, let's see what it gives us. $75 divided by 43, 1.744186. So we need to figure out how we're going to round this. Okay? So let's look at the third decimal. It's 1.744. Because the third decimal is a 4, then we keep the 4 as is. If the third decimal is a 5 or greater, then we would have to round up. So, for rounding, you look at the third digit. If the third digit is between a 1 and a 4, okay, then you keep as is. If it's a 5 or greater, then you round up 1. Okay? So in this case, we're going to leave it as 1.74 because the third digit is a 4. Okay? So this is going to be 174. Okay? Bonus per hour. Okay? Then step number 3. Okay. Let's see. Step number 3, I'm going to get my bonus per hour, which is $1.74. Okay? And I'm going to multiply it by 0.5 to get my overtime rate. Okay? And then here, if we look at what it says the employer has only to add the bonus to the wages for the week and divide the sum by the total hours worked, which we've done, to determine the regular rate of pay. 1/2 of the regular rate would be the premium needed to be applied to the overtime hours. So why am I divided by 1/2? Because that is what's needed to calculate the premium rate. Okay? So, let's get my calculator here. 1.74 times 0.5, that's going to give me 0.87 cents. Okay, so that's 0.87 cents. Let me do this. 0.87 cents. Okay, is the extra overtime rate. Okay, and then last but not least, we have our last and final step. We're going to get our extra overtime rate, which is 87 cents. Oh, I didn't put it in the right cell. Sorry. I was like, why does it look weird? So I'm going to do my 87 cents, okay, times the number of hours worked each week. So every week we were working 3 hours overtime per week. And then I'm going to multiply by the number of weeks that make up the quarter, which were 13 weeks. Okay? And then let's get a calculator. So I'm going to get my 87 cents times 3 hours. That's going to be $2.61. So every week I owe overtime of $2.61 because of the bonus. Okay. Now, how many weeks does the quarter have? 13. I'm going to multiply it by 13. Okay. So, my overtime that is due to my employee for the bonus being paid is $33.93. $33.93. So that is the answer. The extra overtime pay is $33.93. Okay. So, first thing we do, let's review. You're going to get the bonus amount of $9.75 in this case and divide by the number of weeks it covers. This particular bonus covers a quarter, which is made up of 13 weeks. So that means that every week your bonus is going to be $75. Okay. Step 2, we're going to get our weekly bonus, which is $75, and we're going to divide by the average number of weeks that you worked on this particular quarter. So the problem says that you worked 43 hours on average. Okay. So that means that for every hour, your bonus is $1.74. Okay. We're going to get that $1.74, and we're going to multiply by half to calculate the overtime rate. Okay. So my overtime rate is going to be 87 cents. Okay. So I'm going to get my overtime rate, which is 87 cents. I'm going to multiply it by the number of overtime hours per week, which is 3. And I'm going to multiply it by the number of weeks during the quarter, which is 13. So that means that during the particular quarter, I owe my employee, on top of the $975 bonus, I also owe them $33.93 of overtime. That is the answer for 221. Okay. So, this covers 3 of the problems that you'll be seeing on your homework. Okay. Make sure that as you look over your problems, you review the textbook. Like I said, it provides very useful information. All of the information that I'm providing here is coming straight out of your book. It's just a matter of referring to the correct section, reading it, looking at the examples that they provide, so you can be able to follow along. Okay? So that is the end of the demonstration video to help cover problems for homework 2B. Okay? See you next time.